Playing Possum Podcast.
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 Playing Possum Podcast. Oh, hey.
Hi.
This is Catherine.
Oh, and Jamie.
And it's just us today, which is so interesting and unusual.
Oh, Casey has the day off, and so we're bringing y'all a mini. It's just the two of us.
Oh, and it's going to be weird.
There's a good chance. So
I hope so.
Well, I hope so too.
Yeah, I told Jamie when I hit record, I was like, do you want to just say some weird stuff in the beginning and we can always edit it out?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What should we say that's weird?
Roast, niblet, troll earrings. I'm just filing through some old memories here, milk,
Oh, yeah. Milk, magnesium.
Milk, magnesium.
Jamie and I have known each other for 43 years, which is my whole life. Jamie
Our mothers
came
shared
to the hospital. You came to the hospital when I was born.
Plus.
Oh, yes.
Maternity fashions, picture it, 1980.
What? Fireworks going off, and then I was born, and then I met Jamie, and it
National
was
holiday, and then hi,
hey girl, hey.
Hey. So forgive our inside jokes. We will try to minimize them and or add explanations somewhere, maybe in the meeting notes or the link notes or the
or not.
For handshakes, not for you.
Yeah. So what we were going to talk about, and we were saying in the beginning, we're both a little nervous because we're going to talk about both of us do work that's like pretty personal, and which is, I think, the main reason why I don't ever finish anything, because I don't want anyone to see it. It's personal. But yeah, we wanted to talk about that. And Jamie just finished a big project that is pretty personal. And how did that feel finishing?
It felt good to get it out. One aspect of my studio practice is that I write little backstories, little short stories to go along with certain paintings and stuff. And I do that to just kind of give one to just get it out. It's kind of for me. But I've always been a journaler. I've kept a journal or a diary or a notebook since I was young, like maybe even single digits. I'm not so sure, but more religiously once I became a teenager and stuff. And then in the years after. So yeah, and also there was a long hiatus from Milepost 12 to Milepost 13. Milepost, how I refer to those little short stories. And that had become this huge roadblock for me. The longer that I waited to do it or to get something out, the harder, and the mountain seemed steeper and steeper. So yes, I'm thrilled to finally release Milepost 13, Moon River Cha-Cha. It is honoring my Aunt Paula. The painting that goes along with it is Aunt Paula's cocktail napkins. And this is someone that played a pivotal role in my life, especially in my own piece and in the last few years as well. Someone that we lost in 2023. Yeah. And so I guess these things are tough, but I've done it now many, many, many times. But yeah, again, to reiterate the same thing, this was more meaningful because there was almost a 2-year gap, or there was a 2-year gap from the last time that I had shared any writing. So yeah, a bit of a hurdle, but glad it's out. Please check that out at jamiehudnall.com. Mileposts, number 13.
Yes, and the painting that goes with it, both are really amazing. And I feel like I just want to share a memory of Paula.
Please do.
So I didn't know Paula that well because she lived in Mississippi, so I only met her a couple times. And actually, I think the first time I met her was at your mom's service.
Oh.
I think she said she was taking applications for new best friends because your mom had just passed away. And so I told her I would apply. And she told me she didn't know if I would be picked. But yeah, I just loved how, she had just lost her best friend, and she just was kind of hilarious about it, of taking applications for new best friends. And yeah, I like it. I know it's meaningful in a lot of ways because she is kind of the last of your mom's group of friends that was still living and meant so much to you.
Yeah, and it was really that thought that was the impetus behind I'm going to stop playing Possum and get this out. because I'd not stopped working, but I had stopped sharing. I just ran out of steam at the end of 2022. There was a long gap between the years that I finished school, which I went to art school and then got a master's in fine arts, and then immediately stopped painting. I lost my mom right at the same time. It's my story. And I didn't come back to the canvas for almost 8 years. I didn't paint for a really long time. The irony being that I was teaching art appreciation.
Appreciate it.
Right.
Not mine, but appreciate someone's.
Right. And so I started painting again. It was about a year after that I realized I kind of probably should, even if it's just for myself, explain what this huge gap was, why it happened, and all of that. And so that's really the genesis behind the Milepost. I don't do it with every painting, but I do it when it feels like there's something extra that the painting's not going to communicate, that I can, share in text and share through storytelling and stuff. That was such a big part of that group of people, Paula and Mama and Kenny and Ellen and Lewis and Christine and all the happy hour people. They were all part of the happy hour group here. And their stories and camaraderie have just always stayed with me. I think that is the best part of who they were. And I just kind of cling on to my little piece of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love reading about it and learning more about them. And I think I have learned a lot from watching you do this practice, and have tried to dip my toe in a little bit with writing with your help and your editing. But I have been playing Possum hard on my own writing. You and I spent a week together last January, and I got together these 6 pieces that I was these are kind of my relational pieces and really personal things. And I think I've gotten out 1 of those 6. And yeah, it's really hard to put it out there because I think, and I've actually put out some of the work, but not the writing. And I think what is hard for me is when people see the work and they're like, oh, cool. And but there's so much more to that, the work. And so when you say that of the work that needs some explanations, I think I feel very much that way about, I did this tray for my dad for his 80th birthday. And it's a marquetry, which is sort of making images with wood. It's a very old technique that not a lot of people do currently. This is actually kind of what it looks like. This is not wood, but I have a bolo tie on for the listeners, and it's a picture of a fish. I didn't make it.
Merch forthcoming.
Yes. Kitty Diamond's Western Wonderland. Yeah, and I think what happened with me, and I'm curious about your own experience doing this painting. I mean, other paintings I know, but this specific one about Paula's cocktail napkins is it took me so long because I also had to get the skills to do this thing. So I had to learn about steam bending, and I took a steam bending workshop, and then I made the form for this tray, and then I knew the imagery I wanted in it, but my skills weren't really where I wanted them to be. And so I took this marquetry class, and there was it was over a year just to even get the skills. And then as I was doing it, I felt so much I understood my dad more, and I my relationship with him deepened, which is it's very I think in some ways it's very it feels selfish or something, or it feels very one-sided in some ways. But I think actually as this went on, my relationship with my dad, my personal relationship and actual interactions with him have changed over these times, because it was actually, I think, me changing and understanding him more without actually having a conversation. It's I realized how much so it's about this koi pond, and he's made this beautiful garden. They just moved from this house, but
Edmonds is a legendary gardener.
Yeah, it's a Japanese garden
Oasis
from that you would go visit, because it's amazing. It's amazing space, and such a calm space for me to return to over and over and over again, and this sort of place of peace, even though I've moved around a lot, even though, things have happened in my family that have been hard, he's sort of created this oasis for my family. And I wanted to sort of acknowledge that, I think. And I didn't even know why I wanted to do it really until the end. And I think that happens to me a lot. Like, I think one thing that's interesting to me is I feel like you kind of know the why before you start. And I feel like I'm like kind of the opposite, where I'm like, oh, that's why, like at the end of making. And I feel like I sort of get transformed during the process. And I'm curious, like, because you do know the why, do you feel that transformation, or like you think the transformation comes before that and then you're able to make the work?
Well, one of the struggles in my painting is that because I work from photographs and I'm using projector, a lot of times things feel, or in the first years, things were feeling, got to a point where it felt formulaic. There wasn't discovery, and it had become less and less enjoyable. So that is, for me, where the mystery is in the work, is in the making and in the painting, and trying to not arrive with a concrete idea of what I want it to look like. But the inspiration is the same from start to end. I come to it knowing that I want to honor this person, or I want to share about this person, or tell funny stories or whatever. Or, maybe it's something one of their possessions left behind that is now my personal property, that I want to focus on, uses the impetus for the work. But no, they're rarely, the only surprise is what the finished piece actually looks like. And that's something that just kind of arrived at. It really took me a while to allow myself to explore more in my painting.
Mm-hmm.
I felt very locked in by my references and stuff, and I had to convince myself that you need to let it go,
Yeah.
figure out what let it be what it wants to be, and stop being so controlling.
Yeah.
Where that comes from.
Yeah. I think, well, and I think what's interesting, so do you write the piece that you wrote? Did that come after the painting, or
Well, in this particular
during?
case, Milepost 13 for Paula's Cocktail Linens, that was my eulogy for her funeral.
Right.
So that was one piece that wasn't fiction.
Yeah.
So that was set when I got started. The writing does not always come first. Sometimes it's in the middle, sometimes it's at the end. But I've usually fallen in love with an image, a photograph that I've taken, of their personal belongings or whatever. And the writing will kind of develop from there. It's usually a good process.
And what, like, I'm curious, like, what is the, like, because I have one of your paintings that is your mom's plates, which is like so meaningful for me, because like I grew up so Jamey and I grew up like at the bottom and the top of a hill on Pine Forest Drive.
Atlanta, GA.
Yeah, you can go check it out.
303.
And that plate picture has a lot of personal meaning for me. And when you finished it, I was like, I don't want anyone else to have it, because, I grew up going to your house and seeing those plates, and I wanted it like in my kitchen, of like the plates that your mom had. And I think, like I think about like particularly that wall of plates is really for me for a lot of reasons. But like, I remember we were like, your youth group had come,
I was
and
just remembering that.
Yeah, we were like horsing around or something, and like Will pushed me against the wall and a plate broke, and I was just like, oh my God, I was like so terrified that your mom was just gonna like totally like freak out, and she was just like not upset at all. And I think that is just such a, like, for me, I think it's a reminder of just like how incredibly wonderful your mom was, and like just like so chill, and like just so understanding of like youth and like the silliness of it all. And like, not, even though she had these lovely plates, like it wasn't like, of course the plate was not more important than me. And like, yeah,
she was good at that. She didn't sweat the small stuff. She really was able to keep things into perspective. And she loves some Catherine Edmonds.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's something like, and Paula too, like hearing you talk about her, even though like I don't know her that well. And I think like the writing you've done about that group of friends is like, they were just so silly and had so much fun. And like, like I think about the other memory I have about Paula is we were at the cabin, and it was also, again, like sort of like for your mom. Faye Hudnall, for those who don't know, Jamie's mom, she was just this amazing woman, and gave us all jobs at this preschool that we worked at. And so we were spreading her ashes up at the cabin in North Georgia, and we had some beverages, and we like got Paula, and we had made up a dance that we wanted Paula to like watch. And we were like, I mean, we were like well into our 20s at this point. Like, this is
closing in on 30. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were like, Paula, watch our dance. And like, we were just being so ridiculous. But it was, like, it was such a like serious moment in that, like, we were spreading your mom's ashes, but like, they made it also like that it was a celebration and that it was fun, and like that we are supposed to be silly and fun. And I think, like, you and I grew up being so silly and doing such insane stuff. And I think that is such, a product of the way your mom was, and just how much she encouraged us to have fun,
Yeah.
and
I mean, you and I had our own language. Absolutely.
yes.
We existed in a bubble, just the two of us. And as far as we were concerned, we owned all the property surrounding our house. The houses, we had the creek, the everything. But yeah, and that friend group was that way too. They had their own language, and they were just so funny.
Yeah.
About everything. The secret phone call back in the 80s before caller ID, just to know that they weren't going to be harassed by a telemarketer, which I guess technically exists anymore either.
Yeah.
The secret phone code was to call once and then hang up, and then immediately call back. It was, secret call, secret handshake. I mean, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh my God. There still are telemarketers, because I get spam calls like every day.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
You still?
Yeah. Don't you?
Yeah, I guess I have from time to time. I think I get more like spam texts and stuff like that. It's like your shipping confirmation.
You have a UPS package waiting for you.
It's stuck at the border. Call now.
Call now.
Well,
oh my God.
I'm curious about you and your work. So it was really good for me to go through that process of you writing about your work, because I realized how much I enjoyed reading about it. And not just because I know you, but I don't know that much about woodworking, certainly not the skill and the craft that you've invested into your work, but also the backstory, and it was good for me because I was realizing, hey, maybe I'm not just shouting into the void. I mean, I knew I've had people that have been very supportive over the years, but I didn't know if it was because they just love me or if they actually enjoyed reading what it was that I wanted to share. But I had a very positive reaction reading what it was that you were writing about. In the making and the creating and the inspiration of that beautiful koi tray, and it was like opening a little window into that relationship between you and your dad, which privy to the Edmonds my entire life. Spent quite a bit of time at your house at dinner table as well. But we haven't talked about every single little nuance of our lives, and so that was very inspiring to me. How has it been for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing Possum hard on getting that writing out, partially because I accidentally deleted what I had finished from Google Drive. Thanks, Google Drive. So, but, like, we talked about this, starting something new in that podcast of like, typically if you do it again, it's better. And so like, I know that, and I need to just do it. But I think it's been hard for me the last few months of getting that one in particular out, because my parents did move and left that house. And so like, there's an added layer, like what I wrote before, they were, I didn't know they were moving. Like, it was a different, so it's like, now it's like a totally different experience of like, we can't go to that pond, and that pond, belongs to someone else now. We would be trespassing.
Right. That didn't want to hurt me, but yeah.
Yeah. So, and my parents lived in this house for 47 years. So yeah, I need to spend some time kind of, I think, revisiting it. But yeah, I think, and like, the experience for me is like, I don't even think I really understood why I really wanted to do that tray and why some of my work is so personal until we spent that week in January last year sort of writing. Like for me, it's like I come to art sort of through science, and like I didn't go to art school, and so I didn't get as much education around like how to think about my work, and and also like came from woodworking, which is a very like, there's a lot of like patriarchy instilled. I mean, which every discipline has that, but like in particular, so I think a lot of woodworkers actually experience this, but it's not talked about. Like, you think about like the grandpas in their shop making stuff for their grandkids is like sort of the traditional vision of like a white male woodworker. But this is like forever. Woodworking is like this, of like you are making things for your family, or you're building a house for your family, or you're making furniture for someone or whatever. It's like there is this really relational piece to it. And I think also like it ends up sometimes staying in like a piece of furniture or something like this ends up staying in a family for generations. And, you know, we get a lot of people coming to the shop that are like, you know, basically saying, you know, my grandfather was a carpenter, or like there's some lineage in most people's family that someone did woodworking. So it's relational in that way too, of like, you know, and my dad actually did finished a lot of the furniture in the house I grew up in. He refinished a lot of stuff that was like heirloom family furniture. And so I feel like that was sort of another layer that I didn't even really understand sort of the level of it until they moved, because my mom walked me through the house and really told me like, oh, your dad refinished this, your dad refinished this, and like stuff that's like hard to do. Like people have asked me to refinish furniture and it's really hard. And so it was like really cool to like see the stuff my dad did and understand, you know, like he also has a level of this craft, and you know, he's really good at like fixing things and always has been. But yeah, I think for me, like there's also sometimes like if there's a commission and somebody wants me to learn a skill, it's like, yes, I can do it, and yes, I'm interested in it, but like the drive for me to learn these skills I needed to make the tray was like this really intense drive. And like I think it's like we've talked a little bit about this, of like it's sort of like I needed these things to say the things I needed to do, or in this piece of like, you know, like I feel like I'm not really making sense, but it's like sort of, I think when your work is more personal, like your voice it's like pushed in a way that isn't as much pushed in like a commission piece. And I think some of that is like, I was thinking about this recently because I just finished this table. Finally, I deliver it. Actually, I'm delivering it right after this, and I need to find the little dots that the glass is going to sit on, and I don't know where they are, and I don't think I can just go buy them at the store. So I'm like, oh my God. But I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll just put some hot glue down. But I'm like, here's your table that I spent a year and a half on. I'll just hot glue the glass down. But I lost my train of thought. But I think, what was I saying?
Do you imagine you're going to continue writing about your work?
I want to, and actually, thank you for regrouping me.
Well, I enjoyed it so much, and everyone should check out Catherine's writing at catherineedmonds.com. And her incredible art.
I have 2 pieces up now. One is about like starting over, and then another one is about a cloud mobile that I did about being queer and fabulous, obviously. But yeah, I think I want to keep writing about my work. And actually, this table, I feel like I have something I want to write about it. And again, it's like the same thing. Like I was just sort of doing this as a commission, and like sort of collaborated with this woman on the design a little bit. And so it's not entirely in my voice. And I told Marcia, I was like, it's a little more subtle. Like the work, I really like it. I think it's really pretty, but it's like, it's a little subtle for me. Like I think my work is more like in your face and graphic, and more like, not graphic like bloody gore, but like graphic like color and pop. And so it's interesting to me to see something like that I make that's like more subtle. And like I think in some ways it's like that's why maybe I didn't really understand like what the meaning is until the end. But like sort of when I looked at it at the end, it's sort of like it's 2 semicircles that are sort of on the out, like cut in half and facing away from each other, and then there's an oval that pulls them together. And it's like I feel like what I saw like at the end, once I saw it together, is like, oh yeah, it's sort of like, I think with trauma or when something happens to someone, it's like you feel very like broken or something like that. And so it's sort of like these two halves of a circle are kind of like broken, but like, and like you're never necessarily going to be the same. But I think you end up like, if you are interested in sort of moving forward, it's like you kind of have to bring those parts of yourself back together. But it's like, I like that it's like a different shape. It's like an oval that sort
Right.
of brings these parts together.
It's been a long day.
And yeah, that you're like transformed to sort of a different person. And I think there's language in the PTSD world that's like post-traumatic growth. And I like that versus like it being, I think PTSD is like the D stands for disorder. And I think, yeah, I don't know. I just like, which is like, I'm like, I don't know if I can write this like really personal thing about something that's going to be in someone else's house, but I made a full scale model of this. And so I want to make a second one for us. And that one's going to be like blue and very like graphic and loud and
it's more
not so subtle.
For sure.
Yeah. And so maybe I'll just write about that table.
I would love to read anything you write about the process, because there were so many emotions involved in this from start to finish.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Now, maybe once you drop it off, you'll have new feelings about it all.
Yeah. I know. I told Casey, and she thought it was so funny. I was like, how to make a table that pisses everyone off. And I was like, why? Like nobody, it's so funny because like, I feel like as an artist, like you have these like insane emotions and experiences. And like, I imagine like people from the outside are like, why don't you just finish that table? You know? And you're like, why don't you just fuck off? You know? And like, yeah, because it's like, it's not like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I can relate to that. I have pieces that there are a number of steps that I have to go through to get from start to finish. And I have pieces, they're not abandoned. Some might think that they are, but I mean, they've been in process for years.
Yeah.
For a long, long time. And other stuff takes priority, or I move around it, or my feelings change about it, or whatever. But
yeah,
that's going to take as long as it takes.
Well, and I think too is like, first of all, like my wife works as a scientist, and like publishing their work like takes sometimes 10 years. And so, you know, I think it's not unlike other types of work, but there is, yeah, I don't know, maybe there's more shame around it for us as artists that, I mean, I'm sure probably some other people experience shame around their work, but I think we already like are playing or just pretending, or like, you know, like we're just like children, right? And so for us to be like, yeah, to not get the work done feels like we're already like not adults anyways. And so I think like that, I personally have a lot, I think, of shame around like being like, oh, I didn't finish that. And so I'm just still not an adult or whatever. And like,
I'm the worst. I can't believe I still haven't started on. I can't believe I still haven't finished that. I can't believe I haven't gotten this framed. Like, ideally, we would be, you know, a little factory and churning out a piece a day. Yeah, but it's so easy to beat myself up for not being further along on XYZ.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think the reality for this table anyways is like, and the tray too, it's like, if I tried to finish it any earlier, I wouldn't have had the skill to make it be the way I wanted it to. And so it was like I was really struggling with how to glue it up, because nothing on this table is square or anything. Like it's like circular and angular. And like I talked to my mentor when I saw her, and she saw it and she was like, okay, you need to make these like calls. And then it was like, oh yeah. And then it took me still more time to like sort of figure out how to do that. And so it's like, I think sometimes, yeah, it's like you can't finish something. And like I have another thing that I had been working on, and then I kind of took a break from it because it was like the process wasn't right. It was like super tedious. And Marcia ended up doing like a smaller version of sort of what I'm trying at a larger scale. And like at working with her, we figured out a more efficient way to do it. And so it's like, oh, now I can go back to that, and it's not going to be so horrible and painful, and I can do it like more efficiently. And so I think sometimes, I don't know if you feel like that with your paintings of like, well, you know, my skill's higher and now I can come back to that.
Absolutely. Like when I started and I came back after like an 8-year hiatus, there were images I fell in love with right away. I started taking photographs and, everything was of a personal nature. It's about myself, my family, the things that have lived around us all these years. Yeah, there were some that I knew, like the painting of Mama's Elfware. Knew when I started back, it would be a while before I could get to that one. And that was just the reality of it. I almost had to reteach myself how to paint. It's so Oh, so moving forward, do you still, obviously there will always be some personal element to your work in one fashion or another. Do you have really great ambitions for this year in that respect?
Yeah, I think I do. I think after finishing that commission and seeing like what the work looked like and how, bye girl, uh, how it's not that it doesn't feel representative of me. Um, I think it's very representative of what I'm capable of in woodworking. Um, but I feel like it's not like a part of me, if that makes sense. And I think that that's why it was so hard to do, is like it wasn't like something that I had dug deep into my creepy soul and pulled out this weird, thing in my head.
That's a piece of you. Why are
Yeah.
we both so terrible at commissions? Terrible.
Yeah. Well, I remember you had that painting of that kid and you wanted to paint him blue.
I
And like,
know, I couldn't get around it, and I finally just delivered it unfinished and said, white flag. So please calling a local portrait painter. I'm not him.
yeah.
Best of luck. Get a photographer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some people are good at commissions, and like my business partner is phenomenal and he churns them out and he can work on it. And I think I heard this woman interviewed on social media, of course, and she said, like, I love all the art I do because it's a part of me. And even if it's bad, even if, like whatever, it doesn't matter because it's like a part of me. And so I think this year, I think I'm not going to take any commissions, which feels kind of scary
Right.
but like, honestly, I think
Money is
on
money.
that commission, I could have paid the woman what she paid me and gotten more money just not doing that, because it was like so painful, right? Like, and
Well,
so
it's
it's
away
like,
from other work and other time in the shop, and
yeah, exactly. And then anytime I'm not working on that, I feel guilty and like there's an expectation, somebody's waiting for something. And so I think for me, it's like I really want to focus this year on doing work that is really personal and like is very much like from my deep, dark, creepy soul, and like doing weird stuff. Like I've been describing some of the stuff I want to do to people at the shop, and they're like, "What is that?" And it's like, so there's a huge fear response when people do that, but I think it's like I have to just be like, why would they know what this is? Like, it would be weird if they did, because it's something that I made up from, like, right? Like, it would be weird if they knew what I was talking about because it's totally made up and it has never existed in the world. And so I think that's one of the things where it's like, oh, people don't respond to your ideas as much as you want them to because they're your ideas. And that, like, I feel like I'm just now realizing this as I'm saying it out loud, but it's like I've had this conversation with my business partner where like sometimes she's like, oh, you run those shops so differently than I would. And it's like, well, because I'm not you, right? Like if, it would be weird if I ran the shop like you did because you're not me and I'm not you. And so I think sometimes commissions end up being really hard because the person wants something that already exists in the world. And I don't want to make something like that, And so, and that's why, like, I didn't work. I love the folk school here and like I helped start that. But so much of that work is like sort of teaching skills and making something like, here's this thing I made and make another one of them. And I think that that's really important. And I think that's a really good way to learn, but it's not what I want to make. I don't want to make something that already exists. And so I think,
well, I feel the same way. Life would be so much easier for me if I was a pet, if I painted pet portraits and loved it.
yeah,
Everybody's
yeah,
got a pet. Some people would, pay you to paint them. That's not,
yeah.
unfortunately.
I know. We have so many pet portraits in our house and I love them
I
all.
think they're wonderful. And kudos to the people that are making money doing it, especially.
Yeah.
I love the ones that are like, turn me royal, and it's like,
I know.
it's a crown and a robe or something
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I just, for whatever reason, that personal nature, that quality to my work is just there. And it's one of the reasons that I do it, I realize now. And so in all these years of trying to do commissions or trying to do something for a friend or being part of a volunteer organization, they need an artist to draw up something, blah, 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 blah. All of that is good and necessary, but it's not in my wheelhouse. I can do it, but it's like you in the table. What I put myself through to get to the end result and then pass it off and get it out of my life is it's
So
journey.
brutal. Yeah. And it's
Just write about my family and all of their things that remind me of them and their inside jokes. I'm being as a clan. And
oh my God.
that's my goal moving forward. Like this year
Yeah.
is to second guess myself less and to just give into that personal element.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I feel like just hearing you say that is like, I feel like maybe we could have a response like that of like, not, exactly that, but like when someone asks us for a commission or asks us, can you do this thing for my friend? Or like, and there's this like appeal for me of like, there's a relational aspect of it. Like, the table was for someone I knew. And so, like, there's that pull of like, oh, maybe this will feel relational, but it doesn't exactly. And so then it's like that's I think one of the big hard things for me is like, oh, it doesn't quite feel relational enough for me. And actually, when I finally started finishing the table, was I sent her a video of like everything I'd done so far and the process, and like I was like, I need to relate to this person. I need her to understand what I'm going through, and I need her to like see it. And like, and then she wrote back, she was like, take your time. This is so cool to see. And I was like, okay, I can finish the table. And I think it would be interesting to like respond to someone when they say, can you build this thing? And it's like, well, actually my work is, I don't know, like, what would you say? Like, what would be a good response?
Well, what I do now, because it used to stress me out and just give me anxiety and I feel so guilty that I've got the skill set and people are asking for things and I'm not
Yeah.
providing. But what I do now is I recommend people that I know can do it well and are happy to do it because
Yeah.
I know a lot of other artists and there are people that are willing to do it for the right amount of money.
Yeah.
And so that's what I usually do. But I think that for you to use other language and say, well, my work tends to be pretty personal and I need to have a connection to it in that sense. So it's going to be a challenge for me to make a coat rack for you
Mm-hmm.
unless it can have big, scary arms and
Yeah, exactly.
a bowling eye that
Yeah, exactly.
looks good in a wig, like,
Yeah. Is it somewhere to hang your wigs? Then I'll consider it. Otherwise, no.
I'm going to need rungs upon rungs for my wigs.
Yes. Oh my God. I met someone yesterday that is like weaving wigs. Like they're doing it like by hand. They're learning the process of making wigs.
Oh, it's the Lord's work.
It is. Oh my God. Will you tell the story of I was wearing that wig?
Well, better yet, I will direct everybody to Milepost, whatever, get happy, because it's actually in writing there.
Okay. Okay.
So
I won't spoil. I
please
won't
check
do a
that out at
spoiler alert.
jameyhudnall.com. It's Milepost, get happy, and I think it's number 7, but I could be wrong. Maybe 6 or 7.
Okay.
5.
Cool.
But yeah,
Excellent.
if you want an excellent wig story, they don't get much better than that.
Um,
I'm trying to think if we have anything that we could share that's peachy.
a story. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I was wondering, like, and maybe this would make the podcast too long, but maybe people could break here if they didn't want to stay on. But I was wondering if you would actually read the piece about Paula's cocktail
oh
napkins.
yeah. Yeah, short enough that I could do that, I guess.
And if you got to go, you can go. But one thing Jamey and I have talked a lot about is, so I have learned as an adult, I have dyslexia, and that's what makes reading feel like I'm gonna pass out. It's just really hard for me. And so I love listening to things. And that's something I do on the 2 writings I've put out. I also recorded myself for those people who don't like to read. And so, yeah, I was going to have Jamey read his Milepost.
So just to recap, yes, it's Milepost 7, get happy for the excellent wig story.
Okay. Excellent. Yes,
Okay,
please.
good.
We'll link to that. It is so funny. It is like one of my favorite stories about wigs, which I mean,
And
I
I
have
wish
a
it was
lot.
mine,
So
but it came
yeah.
from the career happy hour. Those kids are wild. All right. Let me blow it up so I can read it.
Okay. And I'm going to mute myself so you can't hear me laughing.
All right. Hey, with my dollar store readers. All right, y'all. This is Milepost 13, Moon River Cha Cha. It is paired with the painting Aunt Paula's Cocktail Linens #1. It's acrylic on paper, 16 by 16, 2024. All right, picture it. Laird's Funeral Home, Natchez, Mississippi, December 28th, 2023. Good afternoon, y'all. My name is Jamey Hudnall. I'm part of Paula's extended or adopted family, and were she here in this moment, I imagine she'd say, "What a revolting development." For those of you who knew Paula, you know she had a phrase to suit any circumstance, and having been asked to speak here today, I challenged myself to recall as many of her sayings as possible. Ain't no hill for a stepper, right? So feel free to count them errata ding as we go along. Sadie, I know you're sober as a judge, so keep count for us, girl. We're already up to 3. Some of you may remember that Paula spoke at my Uncle Kenny Hathaway's funeral back in 2006. Kenny and Paula were lifelong pals and colleagues, and his unexpected passing shocked us all, especially the folks at Vidalia High School, where he and Paula taught English together for decades. And though unimaginably difficult, Paula bravely stepped up the day of his funeral to pay tribute to her best friend. She looked out onto the congregation, just as I am doing now, and said, "Y'all need to pull yourselves together. Enough of these tears and sad faces. Kenny would disapprove." And I'm reiterating her sentiment now. As Paula would say, enough of y'all's crying. Count it all joy. Paula was my aunt, appointed by my mother, Faye, also a dear lifelong friend of Paula's. So truthfully, Paula's family and mine aren't blood related. We've just been close for decades. Mama's parents, Frank and Helen Junkin, and Paula's older sister and brother-in-law, Christine and Louis Foster, were tight pals going all the way back to high school, way back to the early 1940s. Their tight-knit bond was passed down through the generations, which I am happy to say is still evident today. Look at all of us gathered here together now. One Ferris wheel and a corn dog away from a state fair. Now, raise your hand if I've already told you this. I'm an artist, a painter, and occasionally I write little short stories that I refer to as mileposts to go along with certain paintings, providing a little backstory to their creation and development. Writing about my work was a foreign urge at first, an aspect to my studio practice that I hadn't anticipated. But I found myself besieged by a very persistent call, pushing me to start writing about my art and my family for some unknown reasons. Once I relented, I found there was one significant concern. I realized that I would need some help making sure I didn't make a fool of myself in print. And thankfully, I had a ringer in my corner, a 40-plus year veteran of high school English, my Aunt Paula. Though she didn't quite grasp the reasons I was doing any of this writing in the first place, and to be honest, neither did I, she patiently helped me shuffle commas around as we tiptoed through Milepost 1. And by the time we arrived at Milepost 6, I believe she could see what I was trying to do better than I, and convinced me that I didn't need to rely on her help anymore. My words to her in that moment were, "Are you ludicrous, Leroy? Do you really think I can do this without you?" And Paula replied with, "Is the Pope Catholic?" Perhaps she had tired of my need for reassurance, or maybe she really thought I was ready to spread my wings, so to speak, but eventually I could see her wisdom at work and move forward on my own. Now, having arrived at Milepost 12, I'll always be grateful for her encouragement and support. It set me off on an exciting new trajectory, something I didn't know I was capable of doing and probably needed. Plus, it added another layer of texture to my studio practice. And so this is why I stand before you today, because I've been Noah Tater Jones, and Claudia asked if I had something that I could share, the obvious answer being, did the Baptist have a church van? I had a number of mileposts to choose from to honor my friend, our dear Paula. In addition to being my editor, she also played a big part in my little stories, and though it was tough choosing the right passage, I settled on one that always makes me smile. The following is an excerpt from Milepost 10, Closer to Fine, which is paired with the painting Pink Dogwood #2. To set the scene, it describes a trip to our family cabin in the North Georgia mountains to spread a portion of my Aunt Ellen's ashes, Mama's youngest sister, Paula's dear friend, and one of the cornerstones of the crew of Happy Hour, Ellen Junkin Saunders. And here it is. We all returned to the cabin in July, but with a few welcome additions, my cousins Laura Lee and Sadie, and our Aunt Paula, their godmother. It was only the second time we've been able to get together since forfeiting Paula to Carolina, When she left Natchez for Thanksgiving last year, she never came back, permanently relocating to be with family in her hometown of Columbia, a disappointing but inevitable development after a challenging 2020. We're all still adjusting to her move. Much like the cabin mite, Paul has been a constant throughout my life, especially across the years I've been in Natchez. Ours is the story of how Mama's lifelong best friend eventually became mine too, thanks in part to the curveballs hurled our way by Father Time. Forcing goodbyes we'd long feared, Paul and I ended up weathering our shared losses together, nursing our hurts with the girls over cocktails at happy hour, the long-standing weekly tradition we once shared with those we loved and lost. For the last 6 or 7 years, we've pressed on, just the four of us, working to keep an old tradition alive, desperately clinging on to a piece of our shared past. But maintaining her 3-bedroom, 2-bath house finally proved too much for Paula, and so her South Carolinian sister dispatched family to Mississippi to pack up Paula's lifetime of treasures, move them over to the other side of Georgia, and put her house up for sale. The move was no small undertaking. My Aunt Paula had her some treasures. Across the years, she, Kenny, and Mama would slip out of town to go junkin'. The three of them would barrel south down Highway 61 to Woodville, St. Francisville, New Roads, and beyond, stopping in every little shop and flea market between Natchez and New Orleans. Rare was the occasion anyone returned empty-handed. Mama with a basket or crock for the cabin, Kenny with antique barware, and Paula with milk glass, a footstool, or something commemorating a royal British coronation or jubilee. Decades of Paula's junket treasures, combined with her dense array of fashions, family heirlooms, varied holiday decorations, and splurges from the Dollar General, filled every nook, cabinet, and cranny of her home, creating quite the chore for her family when it came time for the big move. They figured the best tactic would be to deconstruct the house and then group like items in piles, baskets here, lamps there, which proved wise but yielded a couple surprises. Upon final count, there were 27 footstools in Paula's house, a fact that amuses me endlessly because it rings with her oft-used declaration, "As God is my witness, I'm going to be tall and thin in my next life." With her most treasured treasures en route to South Carolina, the girls and I came in and packed up items they had thoughtfully left behind for us. A couple armoires, antique barware, and their Aunt Gertie's matching dining room table, chairs, buffet, and china cabinet set. After our sweep through, Paula generously donated her remaining possessions to various Miss Lou charities, appliances included, everything except her 2003 Buick Oldsmobile. That nearly vintage Butte was sold off despite having only logged 43,000 miles across its 18-year existence. For Paula, the car was a point of pride, often encountering old men at the gas station or the Piggly Wiggly who'd politely inquire about the model year and mileage of her handsome Buick before requesting, "Lady, please call me when you're ready to sell this car." Simply, once retired, my Aunt Paula only drove to church, the beauty parlor, the pig, and happy hour. And with the damn pandemic, the car hadn't been backed out of the driveway in more than a year, except for that one time. It sat so long it eventually developed a flat tire and dead battery, which proved quite helpful, actually. And truth be told, Laura Lee and I had been driving Miss Daisy most everywhere the last couple of years because of that one time. And since it was clear she wouldn't be driving on the harried streets of busy Columbia, we found her chariot a new owner, and Paula's Buick stayed behind in Mississippi. So it was always my hope that Aunt Paula would find a way to make it back to Natchez, and though this is not what we had in mind, I am grateful that she is home. I've missed her as dearly as the rest of my happy hour family, the folks that taught me how to achieve a dark room, feed a crowd, stock a bar, and deck the halls. Kenny, Mama, Ellen, Christine, Lewis, and Paula. And now they are finally all together again. So look out, Natchez City Cemetery. Trouble isn't down. Chapter meeting is back in session. I'd like to thank Paula's family for allowing me to honor her today. Know that we love y'all dearly, and please remember that in times of sorrow to worry not, for Paula did not leave us without an example to follow. Of the many funerals Paula and I attended together, I observed her offer the same words of comfort to the bereaved each and every time. With love, she'd say, "Though I am sad for you and sad for me, I am happy for them." And so today I am happy for Paula. After all, she would insist that we count it all joy. Count it all joy. That's the attitude she embraced each and every day, and it served her very, very well. Should you like to read more about Paula's and my adventures in the crew of Happy Hour, you can find my work at jamiehudnall.com. And should you care to know any of Paula's sayings I couldn't repeat in this setting, you are welcome to buy me a beer. Thank you. And there is a little Easter egg behind that. Aunt Paula's BLT dip. Check it out. Check it out.
Awesome. Thank you for reading that.
Oh, well, appreciate you asking. I hadn't done that yet. I still intend to record myself reading all the Milepost and adding it to the website. That was a great suggestion. I've loved listening to you read your own work. So
yeah. Well, this is the first one. We can pull the recording and put it on your website. I think we can do that technically. Casey will probably have to help us because we're old. We're old, and Casey is young and also very technically savvy. I thought I might read The Power of Pride, the post that I have.
I love that.
And again, if you gotta go, you gotta go. And this is on my website, and you can listen at it on another time. But I thought it would be good to just have sort of an example of some of my stuff, and it feels very timely also to read this one in particular.
I'm gonna wisely mute myself somehow.
Okay, so this I wrote about Pride, which, if you don't know what Pride is, there's a month in June, but sometimes it's celebrated other times for the queer community, and just it's awesome, and you should go to a Pride event if you haven't. So I did these like cloud mobile things, and a lot of times I sort of see the product shot before I even make the product. Like, I don't know, I'm very visual, and so I had this vision of me with a rainbow umbrella under these clouds with rain, and so that there's some images there, and so that's what this work is. I wrote this about that work. Okay, so Happy Pride. I am writing this post in June, the official month of Pride. I actually planned to write this post a year ago. That obviously didn't happen, but here we are in Pride Month again. This past weekend, my wife and I attended Pride in the nearby town of Albany, Oregon. There was a surprisingly large turnout for such a small community, and we fully enjoyed the day, celebrating its end with a drag show that same evening. Afterwards, I kept thinking about the idea that pride is power, that having pride in who you are comes with power. Something I saw on full display at the drag show. The power in the room that night was palpable. As I watched the people in that audience react to the drag performance, I noticed there was a collective sense of euphoria. Many people think of drag as only silly, campy, and fun, but what we were seeing that night was people stepping into their power, being authentically themselves in a way that's rarely seen or felt in our daily lives. I said to my wife, moments like this make me so sad for people who won't come to drag shows or who think drag is dangerous or bad, because those folks are missing out on an opportunity to truly see and accept the power of authenticity, one of the most spiritual experiences I've had in this world. But arriving at this perspective hasn't been easy for me. Truthfully, in the past, I have had mixed feelings about pride, wanting to go to the activities and really embrace my community, but at the same time falling prey to the idea that being proud is being too much or shoving it in people's faces. It has taken me a long time to realize that messaging is designed to keep me and my community small and quiet, stiflingly one-dimensional. I was 18 years old the first time I saw a drag show. My friends and I were in Key West for our senior trip, and a few of us snuck into a bar with fake IDs just for fun. There happened to be a drag show that night, which I found out later is like not that unusual for Key West. But anyways, I remember distinctly that way. I just remember distinctively the way that night made me feel. Euphoric, seeing these folks in their authenticity, just like at the drag show in Albany. Despite the power of that experience, it took me almost another 10 years to come out. Mainly because of all the messaging at the time about queer people being monsters or pariahs in their community. And since I didn't feel like either of those things, I made the rational assumption that I couldn't possibly be queer. But over the years, my authentic self kept knocking at the door, begging to be let out, and eventually, though fearfully, I granted myself permission to make small changes and feel temporarily unsafe, so that I might be stepping into my power and be truly authentic, truly three-dimensional. The path to finding a three-dimensional self has awakened a creativity that I never thought existed in me. My creative path feels similar to the same process I went through to come out. I am slowly allowing authentic ideas to rain down and mustering up the courage to share them with the world. And yet, even now, sharing this photo of myself under a cloud with a rainbow umbrella brings up a lot of fear for me. While working on this object, I saw this cloud mobile unfolding before me. And in that process, I saw myself under the cloud with a rainbow umbrella. When I had the vision, I knew that was going to be my product picture. Yet my inner critic says, oh, this is stupid. It's just a cloud with raindrops hanging down. Anybody can make it. And yeah, that's true, but that doesn't change the fact that I went through a long process to make it my own, and what I have created is quintessentially reflective of myself. The object is part of who I am, and I am part of the object. If I'm not brave enough to be in the picture and be proud of my object, then how can I be proud of myself? I know that fear is just trying to keep me safe, but ultimately I will feel safer in my true form, allowing people to see all of me. The queer version of me, the genderqueer version of me, the neurodivergent version of me, not editing myself to feel safe. I have come to realize that changing who you are so others can feel comfortable changes your form from 3-dimensional to 1-dimensional. And I can't really step into my power until I allow myself to be the full 3-dimensional version of myself. I recently read a David Bowie quote that gave me the push I needed to share this post. If you feel safe in the area that you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little out of your depth. And when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting. Finally, I feel ready to go a little further into the water. Getting to this place has been a process. A long, hard-fought, hard-won process. Now, I love all those different stages of me, all the variations it took to get where I am today. And I love who I am right now. I stand under this cloud, loud and proud, having created an image of something new and different. Not one-dimensional version of Catherine, a woodworker, but all of me. To me, Pride Month is being proud of the process you went through to create and reveal yourself. And I just want that little queer version of me that was unsure and not fully formed to know that someday she'll be standing under a rainbow umbrella under a beautiful object that she created, fully formed into a wonderful human being, loving who she loves, looking how she wants to look, making the things she wants to make, unapologetically 3-dimensional. So yeah, thanks for listening to our writing.
Oh, spoiler alert. If any of y'all haven't seen us since high school, we didn't get married.
Oh my God. Do you remember when your mom asked us, she was like, will y'all just have a baby for me? And you looked at her and you were like, how do you think we're going to do it? And maybe you said the old fashioned way or she did. And you were just like, no.
Apocalyptic.
Oh my God.
Our
Yeah.
offspring would take over the world. So you're welcome, world.
I know.
You mark yourself free from our offspring.
We should have unleashed a creature. If only we had a teen pregnancy, but that wasn't possible. Yeah, we were each other's beards and we went to all dances. Maybe we'll share on social media homecoming picture or something.
Should we get into I'm sure we'll be doing another mini at some point, the two of us, and perhaps we'll share some more stories. There's some good ones.
Yes.
Sure.
I think we should save them.
Was that your first piece that you wrote?
I think the first one I wrote was Starting Over.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that was the second one. And maybe this will be the push I need to put my third one out and I can stop playing Possum.
Don't be doing that now.
Don't be doing that. I'm putting out a musk right now. Playing Possum. Yeah, well, this was super fun. And
it was super fun. Thanks for coming along if you guys made it from start to finish.
Yeah, if
we're hilarious. But sorry.
We had fun.
We had a good time.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the next one. All right, yeah, well, so follow along. You can always find more about the Possums at playingpossumcollective.com. Our podcast is available on YouTube as well as Spotify, and I think maybe been added to Apple Pods, maybe?
Oh, I don't know. Yes, maybe.
Eventually. If not, it's gonna be.
Yes.
There.
And please share this with anybody that you think might enjoy it. And also, if you have someone or you yourself would like to be on our podcast and talk about art or playing Possum, we would love to have you on. So reach out. And yeah, thanks for playing along, and we'll see y'all possums next time. Toodles, possums. Toodles.